Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just so happen to absolutely love this video, please consider liking it, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. If you cannot tell, today is going to be all about the spider plant, or by its real name, the chlorophytum comosum. As always, I think I'm saying it right, but I could be really far off. Today I'm going to be discussing water, light, fertilizing, propagation, all of that good stuff so that you have a super happy and healthy spider plant without crispy tips. That is probably the #1 question people have about spider plants. How do you get rid of the crispy brown tips? Well, today I am going to tell you exactly how to do so. I will pop some time codes up on the screen and we can just go ahead and jump right in. Also, I'm in a new filming spot. I wanted to showcase these beautiful plants, but it is against windows, so I'm just apologizing if I'm not lit very well. Anyway, so this plant is a wonderful, wonderful house plant, and honestly, that's probably why you see it in homes so often. It is an easy grower, a fast grower, and usually the cutest part about spider plants is that people typically have really positive or homey associations with it. So I find the spider plant to be a really exciting and sweet plant because usually there is very little bad to say about the spider plant. Besides the typical standard green form, there are two pretty common spider plant varieties. This is the vitatum, I don't know how to say it, but I'll pop it up on the screen, and that means that the variegation, so the white stripe you see down the middle, is on the inside. However, the variegata variety is kind of flipped, so it will be green on the inside with white on the outside. There are further variations like the Bonnie and stuff like that, which is the really curly spider plant, but just so you know, there are different types of spider plants and the care doesn't vary super crazy, especially among the variegated varieties, but it's always fun to know what spider plant you have in your home. Also, a general tip for the spider plant, which doesn't really fit in any of the categories I'm going to be talking about, is that this plant grows out. So if you do bring a spider plant into your home, even a small one, because remember they grow really quickly, just make sure that you have enough space for it all around the plant. Otherwise, you will probably experience some like pressing against the wall or other plants or a bookshelf, and the leaf might snap. So if you want like a really healthy, grown out plant with no bends and breaks, I definitely recommend giving it a good like 360 open space. Now, moving on to more specific care, we're going to start with water. So spider plants do not want to completely dry out. They do like a little bit of moisture in the soil. I use a moisture meter, honestly, to really tell when to water my plants, and I water when the moisture meter is at about a 3. However, in the winter, I do water even less, so I would probably water around like a 2, or if I'm feeling crazy, a 1. There are some visual cues for when this plant is thirsty, so you might see it drooping down a little bit, but usually by that point it is a little bit too late and too dry. So if you are consistently waiting for it to start drooping, you will probably see crispy tips. So for too little water, you will see some drooping and crispy tips, like I said, but for too much water, you will probably see the leaves starting to get really soft and yellow and maybe some mushiness by the base. And if you pull the plant out of the pot, you will see black mushy stems. And basically that means that your plant has root rot and was sitting in overwatered soil for too long. The last little bit about water that is super important for these plants is that they really benefit from using distilled or filtered water. These plants are very sensitive to the chemicals often found in tap water. So even if you water them a couple times with tap water, which I have done, you will see crispy tips. So I know that my plant got crispy tips from the few times that I have watered it with tap water. Light. Spider plants really love bright, indirect light. And they do well in artificial lighting, which is also why it's a popular office plant. But for the best results, I definitely recommend bright, indirect light, preferably sunlight. When this plant is not getting enough light, the two signs that you will see are, again, drooping leaves, but also a lot of the leaves are going to come in very like thin and dainty and a little scraggly looking. On the flip side, if your plant is getting too much light, so if it's too strong and too direct, you'll see your plant starting to look a little bit chlorotic and pale because it's getting a little bit bleached out by that harsh light. I cannot advocate for proper lighting enough because it truly makes such a difference with these plants, and I will show you why. So this plant that I have here is one that I've had for the same amount of time as this plant. Hold on. This plant. And why is that? Well, that is because of lighting. So clearly this is why I don't have this spider plant on the screen, but I will keep it here for this little section. I'm in a spider plant jungle right now. Basically, this plant got proper lighting since I got it, pretty much. It was either in this west-facing window or under grow lights over there, and it has grown super happy and healthy. I got these plants at about the same size at about the same time. This plant, however, was put in very low light conditions for the majority of its life. So it got the super skinny leaves, it was drooping, a lot of the lower leaves were dying off very quickly. Now it's kind of grown out of the 4-inch pot. As you can see, it's in a 6-inch now, but it only grew into the 6-inch from the 4-inch because I put it under grow lights. Oftentimes spider plants are categorized as low light tolerant plants, but I clearly beg to differ. I think it makes a huge difference in not only the health of the plant, but how fast it grows. And yeah, just do yourself a favor and give your spider plant good light, especially if it has variegation. Let me swap this back because this was a lot more appropriate for the frame. The last thing that I will say about light, which kind of contradicts what I just said a little bit, is apparently too much light can prevent the spider plant from giving you babies, which I wasn't really sure about because a lot of the YouTube videos I've watched specifically tell you to put them under strong light if you want little pups. But I have been keeping, especially the larger plant, under strong light, and I have not had any babies yet. I don't know if I have to be more patient and just give it more time and mature a little bit more, but apparently short days and long nights or periods of darkness will promote babies. So I'm not really sure about that one. I can't give you a strong, solid answer because what I believe to be true isn't working for me. If you have any tips in this area, please let me know because I'm very interested to hear what your experience was. Okay, so soil and repotting is another category that is extremely important for spider plants. Their roots are extremely like fleshy and tuberous and very strong, so you do not want to put off repotting for too long. Otherwise, you will find that the roots are attaching themselves to the terracotta if it is potted in terracotta, and you also risk the chance that the roots are actually going to burst open the pot. Some signs to look for that means that your plant needs to be repotted are roots poking out of the top right here, so you'll see kind of like little like white fleshy things poking out of the top, the roots poking out of the bottom, which I somehow already see a little bit, which is crazy. I just repotted this plant. Also, look for any signs of slowed growth. So if your plant was normally growing really fast and is kind of slowing down, it might be because it's really compacted in the current pot. And lastly, if your plant is declining, so not even just slowed growth, but actually doing kind of bad and you didn't change anything else with its care, it also probably means that it needs a new pot. At minimum, you will probably be repotting your plants about once a year, especially if it's in optimal conditions. When repotting these plants, use a soil mixture that is fairly airy, so does have a little bit of like perlite or pumice, but also retains enough water that it's not going straight through and leaving the spider plant to dry, because as I said, they do like a little bit of moisture. Okay, humidity and temperature. This plant will do just fine in your average home temperature, which is about, I think, 65 degrees Fahrenheit on the low end, but it can go up to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the higher end, but I don't know. My home is now 90 degrees. Humidity is a little bit flexible as well. It can do well in your average home humidity, but higher humidity will definitely help to prevent the crispy tips that we talked about in the beginning of the video. Fertilizer. These plants naturally grow like crazy. They don't really need that much of an extra boost, because if you over fertilize, you will also see crispy tips and you might actually prevent future pups. When you do fertilize, make sure to heavily dilute it. I use an organic balanced fertilizer that I just put in my water and I dilute it very heavily, more than the bottle really recommends. And I just water my plant with that mixture every 2 weeks in the spring and summer, maybe less. And in the fall and winter, I don't bother fertilizing this plant. Okay, and lastly is propagation. These plants are the queens of propagating. They pop out babies like no other plant. Unfortunately, mine I got as babies, so they're still kind of growing to the point where they can produce their own babies, but you will find that these plants just give you plenty of spider plants. Basically, what you can do is, unfortunately, I can't do a demo because I don't have my own babies yet, but you just snip off the little tiny plants that shoot out of the mama plant and take the bottom side that's probably already pushing out a little bit of roots, and you can either place that in water and let the roots further grow out, or you can just plop it into an airy soil and keep that soil moist for about a week. I personally did not have great success with originally keeping the baby in soil. It was once I switched to water that I saw the best results, but that kind of varies on person to person. That was just my personal experience, but my friend who also has a lot of spider plants loves just sticking them straight in soil, and that works well for her. You can also actually root divide these plants. So if you look into your pot and you see a couple different bases, or they might be called crowns too, you can just very gently divide them and then repot them in separate pots, and you will have 2 or more spider plants growing. So those are all of the care tips that I have for the spider plant. As a quick recap for crispy tips, because I want to make sure everyone has an answer to that question, why does my plant have crispy tips? Make sure that you are watering with distilled water on a regular basis, that you are providing some humidity for this plant, you are not over fertilizing it, and you are not giving it too much light. If you follow all of those little care tips, you should have pretty crispy tipless plants. Okay, but that's pretty much it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you learned a little bit about the spider plant. If you have any additional tips or questions, as always, please feel free to comment them down below. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me grow my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!